GoForThe2.com. This is our Week 8 preview of another great matchup in the SEC. It pits the Bayou Bengals of LSU going to College Station to take on the upstart Texas A&M Aggies. LSU 6-1, coming off a big victory last week at home over South Carolina, 23-21. They're back in the hunt for the national championship. They're sitting at number 6 in the nation. They're taking on 18th ranked Texas A&M and Johnny Football. You got the Mad Hatter versus Johnny Manziel, who's known as Johnny Football. It's a conflicting contrast in styles. It's going to be a very intriguing matchup, and we're going to break down both teams for you right now. Like we said, LSU 6-1, coming off the big victory over South Carolina at home last week. They have some momentum. They come on the road. This place is going to be rocking in College Station. It's a renewed rivalry from the early 1990s when LSU and Texas A&M used to clash every single year. Texas A&M was a part of the Southwest Conference back then, and this is a renewed rivalry. The teams met back in the Cotton Bowl a few years ago, which LSU dominated, but this is a regular season matchup, and the fans in College Station are going to be in this ball game. Let's talk right now about LSU. They're 6-1. They have not looked good offensively to date. They've struggled in both road games that they've played. The two road games that they've played were at Auburn. They won 12-10. And then a couple of weeks ago in the swamp in Florida, they lost a 14-6 matchup. The offense did not get going in those games, and it was all on junior quarterback Zach Mettenberger, who hasn't performed, at least on the road. He performed a little bit last week in terms of getting the ball vertical, and credit Les Miles and his staff for the play calling, but Mettenberger in his two road starts is only completed 50% of his passes for 327 yards and one interception. Zach Mettenberger has not thrown a touchdown on the road. They're 1-1. They won a tough matchup at Auburn, and they lost a matchup a few weeks ago at Florida. They're going to need a better effort out of Zach Mettenberger and the passing game. Those wide receivers of Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., and Russell Shepard are going to need to make plays to take the pressure off of Zach Mettenberger in this ball game. Look for Les Miles to try and run the football. That's the approach going in after last week's performance of rushing for 258 yards against South Carolina. Freshman Hill and Spencer Ware were able to wear down the Gamecocks late in that matchup, but you have to credit the play calling early in that game. The ability to let Mettenberger pass on first and second down is what opened up the running game. It forced South Carolina to loosen up and not contain the line of scrimmage, which then later in that ball game opened up the running lanes for Spencer Ware and company. They need to take the same type of approach against Texas A&M for a couple of reasons. Number one, it will take the pressure off of Mettenberger early if he's able to throw early in this game. If he's able to open up and throw on first and second down, that will keep LSU out of third down and long, which is passing situations, and force Mettenberger to make big plays. Secondly, the Texas A&M defense from a rushing defense is a very underrated defense. They held Florida to 142 yards rushing. They only gave up against Florida 3 yards per rush. Their other SEC opponents, Arkansas, they held to 142 yards rushing, which is only a 3.6 average. And then Ole Miss, another SEC opponent, they did give up 159, but they still did not give up over 4 yards rushing in each of those contests. Against Florida, they only yielded 3 yards per rush. Against Arkansas, 3.6, and against Ole Miss, 3.6. So it's a very deceptive defense. This is a very good rush defense, and LSU and Les Miles loves to run the football. In order to open up that running game, LSU is going to have to do the same sort of game plan that they had last week and throw on first and second down to try and get Zach Zach Mettenberger into a rhythm early, and then that will take the pressure off the offensive line and open up the running game against Texas A&M. Can they do that will be a key question mark, but Mettenberger has to step up his game in order for LSU to win this ball game. From a defensive perspective, LSU is very solid. They have two very solid defensive ends of Barkevius Mingo and Sam Montgomery. You saw what they were able to do last week against Connor Shaw. The difference between, I guess, Connor Shaw last week and this week's opponent in Johnny Manziel is Johnny Manziel's a very fast quarterback. He has faster feet and is better in running than Connor Shaw is. And to date, LSU hasn't seen that type of speed out of the quarterback position. The only comparison that you can make up until this point is Florida quarterback Jeff Driscoll, and LSU succeeded in getting pressure on him early. How does that affect the game plan going into College Station against Johnny Manziel, who actually set an SEC total yards record, 576 yards last week against Louisiana Tech. He threw for 395. He added another 181 rushing, and that offensive head coach Kevin Sumlin is hitting on all cylinders going into this ball game. So it's a spread offense attack from Texas A&M and a front seven that Texas A&M, at least until this point, hasn't faced. I don't think Florida's defensive front seven is as solid as LSU's. I think they're just a notch under LSU. So this, in my estimation, this will be the toughest defense Texas A&M has faced from a defensive line perspective, especially with the ends of Mingo and Sam Montgomery. LSU has to keep Johnny Manziel in the pocket. He likes to improvise. He likes to break, contain, and use his feet to make plays, and they must contain Johnny Manziel in the pocket. He's still only a freshman. Look for John Chavis, who always has a game plan in place to confuse Johnny Manziel and show him different looks. So that's a key factor heading into this game from the defensive perspective for LSU. Manziel's only a freshman. He hasn't seen a defense with this type of speed, especially in the front seven. So how will Chavis mix his looks heading into this matchup? Their secondary with Eric Reed and Thorold Simon are very opportunistic. The interception last week against Connor Shaw set up LSU with field position and allowed them to take the lead. So Johnny Manziel has to be perfect in order for Texas A&M to pull off the upset. The X factor in this game has got to be this crowd in College Station. This place is going to be rocking. You're not going to hear a louder stadium than you are Saturday night. The comparison of the Bayou Bengals, yes, Death Valley's rocking, but they're now on the road, and they have had two very tough road games against Auburn and Florida. How does LSU respond after that big victory at home against South Carolina? Expect them to be focused, but the crowd will have a factor on Zach Mettenberger. They have to, in terms of play calling, offense and defensively, LSU has to break tendency and has to strike quick offensively and defensively to take that crowd out of the game. And whether they can do that or not will be a key factor should LSU be victorious on the road. From an offensive standpoint for Texas A&M and head coach Kevin Sumlin, they're averaging a ton of points per game. They were up 27-0 last week against Louisiana Tech. They had to hold on in a barn burner. They won 59-57. But I think you want an up-tempo attack. I don't think you can change anything in terms of your approach heading in with LSU. You want to stay within your game plan, use the feet of Johnny Manziel to open up the passing game and use him to improvise and strike quick, because if LSU falls behind early in this matchup, they are going to be in trouble with Zach Mettenberger's inexperience on the road. So that's the game plan for Texas A&M. You want to strike quick. I think if they win the coin toss, they're going to want to take the ball and try and score on the first possession to get a leg up on that LSU defense. Whether they can do that or not is going to be a key factor in this matchup. Defensively for Texas A&M, their defense from a rushing standpoint is very good. Not one team in the SEC is average over 4 yards per rush. They're going to face a big rushing attack with a very heavy offensive line in LSU. On top of that, they have 3 great backs, Hill, Ware, and Michael Ford's always in the mix. That gives Les Miles the opportunity to always have fresh legs in there. So if Texas A&M can stuff the line of scrimmage and force Zach Mettenberger to make throws, they'll be in this ball game. Mettenberger will have to make plays, and those wide receivers of LSU will have to step up. But I think the approach for Texas A&M is rely on your run defense and force quarterback Mettenberger to make plays on the road. To date, he hasn't done that, and he's going to have to do that for LSU to pull off the victory. We're going to have a breakdown, a prediction for this game on Thursday. Stay with us at GoForThe2.com.